The invitation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my downtown office. The envelope had been placed neatly on top of the stack of documents my assistant had brought in earlier, its creamy surface standing out against the sea of spreadsheets and printed charts. Annual Chin Family Reunion, prestigious Willowbrook Country Club, Saturday, 2 p.m. The elegant cardstock felt expensive between my fingers as I read the detailed dress code requirements and parking instructions printed in precise, tasteful lettering. Even the phrasing of the directions suggested careful planning and a desire to impress. I hadn't seen most of my extended family in 2 years, not since grandfather's funeral, where conversations had been brief and focused on arrangements rather than catching up, and emotions had hovered somewhere between grief and polite restraint. That day had left little room for personal updates or meaningful reconnections. The location choice surprised me. Willowbrook was known for its exclusivity and steep membership fees, the kind of place people referenced in lowered voices or with subtle pride. Someone in the family had clearly done well for themselves, well enough to secure access to a venue that operated behind gates and long waiting lists. I found myself wondering who had orchestrated it all and what unspoken message might be attached to the setting. Saturday morning, I selected a simple navy dress and pearl earrings, nothing flashy but appropriate for the venue. I stood in front of my mirror a moment longer than usual, smoothing the fabric and assessing the overall effect. Professional, understated, composed. I had no desire to compete with anyone or make a statement. I simply wanted to attend, reconnect, and leave with my dignity intact. I slipped on neutral heels, gathered my clutch, and headed out earlier than necessary to avoid arriving flustered. The drive to Willowbrook took 45 minutes through winding suburban roads, lined with mature oak trees and gated communities. The neighborhoods grew increasingly pristine the farther I traveled from the city center, lawns trimmed with mathematical precision and driveways hosting polished luxury vehicles. The country club's stone facade and manicured grounds looked exactly as I remembered from the few times I'd visited for business meetings over the past 3 years. Ivy traced deliberate patterns along the pale walls, and the circular fountain at the entrance sent arcs of water into the air with quiet elegance. There was something deliberately serene about the entire property, as though disorder simply wasn't permitted past the gates. My sister, Victoria, emerged from a silver BMW as I pulled into the parking area. She'd always been the most image-conscious member of our family, and today was no exception. Her designer dress draped perfectly, tailored in a way that suggested it had never seen a sale rack, and her statement jewelry caught the sunlight with calculated brilliance. Her hair was styled immaculately, not a strand out of place. Her husband Mark followed, adjusting his tie and checking his watch as though timing his arrival down to the second. "Sarah," Victoria called out, her voice carrying that particular tone I remembered from childhood. Friendly on the surface, but with an undercurrent of evaluation. "I wasn't sure you'd make it. This place can be a bit overwhelming for people who aren't used to it." I hugged her warmly, breathing in her expensive perfume and choosing not to react to the implication tucked inside her greeting. "It's lovely to see you, Victoria. The venue is beautiful." "Yes. Well, Marcus, you remember my brother-in-law Marcus? He's a member here now. His pharmaceutical consulting business has really taken off." She gestured toward the clubhouse entrance where relatives were gathering in small clusters, their laughter drifting across the parking lot. "He thought it would be nice to have our reunion somewhere special this year." As we walked toward the entrance, Victoria continued her commentary, clearly enjoying the role of informal tour guide and spokesperson for the day's success. "The membership waiting list is 5 years, and the initiation fee alone is more than most people make in a year. Marcus says it's all about networking at this level. You have to invest in the right social connections to really succeed in business." She spoke with the confidence of someone repeating well-practiced lines, as though proximity to exclusivity translated directly into achievement. I nodded politely, holding the heavy glass door open for an elderly couple exiting the clubhouse. The cool air from inside brushed against my face as we stepped through. The interior was exactly as I remembered it. Polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of chandelier lighting, oil paintings of pastoral scenes lined the walls in ornate gold frames, and the subtle scent of fresh flowers drifted from elaborate arrangements placed throughout the lobby. Every detail seemed curated to convey quiet wealth rather than loud display. Our family had claimed a corner of the main dining room, a collection of round tables draped in crisp white linens and set with gleaming silverware and folded napkins shaped like delicate fans. I counted roughly 30 relatives, including cousins I hadn't seen since college and their spouses and children. Some looked older in ways that startled me. Others seemed exactly as I remembered, preserved in my mind at a particular age. The conversation buzzed with updates about careers, new homes, and recent vacations. Snippets of dialogue floated past as we approached. A promotion in Chicago, a new house with a lake view, a Mediterranean cruise planned for the fall. Aunt Linda waved me over to her table, her bracelets clinking as she lifted her hand. "Sarah, dear, how wonderful that you could join us. We were just discussing how impressive this place is. The lunch menu alone must cost more than what I spend on groceries in a month." "It is quite elegant," I agreed, taking the empty seat beside her and placing my clutch carefully at my feet. Victoria was explaining how Marcus arranged all this through his membership. Such a thoughtful gesture for the family. Aunt Linda leaned closer conspiratorially, lowering her voice, though her curiosity remained undisguised. "You're still working at that same office job downtown? That must be challenging in this economy." Before I could respond, Victoria appeared beside our table with impeccable timing, a polite smile already in place. "Sarah, I hope you're comfortable with the menu prices here. I know dining at places like this can be a stretch for some people. Don't worry about it. Marcus has already arranged to cover everything today. We want everyone to feel included." Her words carried the same protective concern I'd heard throughout our childhood, whenever she perceived I might be out of my depth. Well-intentioned, but somehow making me feel smaller rather than supported. It was a familiar dynamic, one where generosity came wrapped in subtle hierarchy. "That's very generous of Marcus," I replied evenly. "I appreciate the family hospitality." Cousin Robert joined our conversation, settling into the chair across from me with a plate from the buffet. "Victoria is right about this place being quite the experience. The membership committee here is incredibly selective. They really screen for the right kind of people, successful professionals, established business owners, that sort of thing." "Robert recently made partner at his law firm," Victoria explained proudly. "He's been thinking about applying for membership himself once he's established a few more high-profile clients." The conversation continued around themes of success and social positioning. Various relatives shared updates about promotions, business expansions, and real estate investments. I listened attentively, asking questions about their achievements and offering congratulations where appropriate. Uncle James regaled the table with stories from his recent Mediterranean cruise, complete with photographs on his phone showing the luxury accommodations and exotic ports of call. The concierge level made all the difference. When you're dealing with a certain caliber of establishment, the service quality becomes paramount. "Exactly," Victoria chimed in. "That's why places like Willowbrook maintain such high standards. It's not just about exclusivity, it's about ensuring a certain level of sophistication in the membership." She turned to me with a slightly lowered voice. "Sarah, I hope you don't feel uncomfortable here. I know it's quite different from your usual environment. These kinds of social settings can feel intimidating when you're not familiar with the expectations." "Everyone seems very welcoming," I assured her. "Oh, absolutely. The members here are lovely people, very accomplished, of course, but not at all pretentious about their success." Victoria glanced around the dining room appreciatively. "Marcus says the networking opportunities alone justify the membership investment. He's already connected with several potential clients just through the golf tournaments and social events." Cousin Margaret approached our table carrying a dessert plate and wearing an expression of mild concern. "Victoria, I was just chatting with the hostess about our reservation, and she seemed confused about something. She kept asking about Chin and whether our party was connected to some regular member account." Victoria's brow furrowed slightly. That is odd. Marcus made the reservation under his name, so there shouldn't be any confusion about the billing. Maybe they have another Chin family who are members, I suggested. It's not an uncommon surname. True, Margaret agreed, though she seemed quite specific about wanting to speak with someone called Miss Chin about some ownership reports or documentation. Very unusual for a hostess to be discussing business matters during a family event. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of our entree. The presentation was impeccable, each plate arranged with artistic precision and garnished with microgreens and colorful vegetable purees. The portion sizes were modest but elegant, typical of fine dining establishments. As we ate, the discussion turned to real estate and investment strategies. Several relatives shared stories about property purchases and renovation projects. Uncle David described his recent acquisition of a vacation rental property in the mountains, complete with detailed financial projections and occupancy rate calculations. The key is finding undervalued properties in emerging markets, he explained between bites of his salmon. You have to think long-term and be willing to invest in improvements that will attract premium tenants. Wise advice, Robert nodded. Property investment requires significant capital up front, but the returns can be substantial if you choose the right locations. Victoria glanced at me thoughtfully. Sarah, have you ever considered real estate investment? I know it requires quite a bit of startup capital, but there are some entry-level opportunities that might be accessible even with a more modest budget. I've looked into various investment options, I replied. The real estate market has some interesting possibilities. You'd probably want to start small, she continued, helpfully. Maybe a modest condo or a duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Nothing too ambitious initially, just something to build equity and learn the basics of property management. Aunt Linda leaned forward with interest. That sounds like practical advice. Real estate can be so complex for people who aren't familiar with the business side of things. All those legal documents and financing arrangements. It helps to have professionals guide you through the process. Absolutely, Victoria agreed. Marcus has been mentoring me on some of the investment terminology. It's quite educational to learn about market analysis and property valuation methods. I had no idea how sophisticated these financial calculations could be. The meal continued with similar exchanges. Family members shared their expertise and offered guidance on various professional and financial topics. The tone remained warm and supportive, though I couldn't shake the feeling that many of the conversations positioned me as someone who might benefit from their more experienced perspectives. During dessert, a distinguished gentleman in a navy blazer approached our corner of the dining room. His posture and confident stride suggested someone accustomed to authority. He scanned the tables briefly before his gaze settled on me. "Excuse me," he said, politely addressing the table in general. "I'm looking for Miss Chin. The hostess mentioned she might be dining with a family party this afternoon." Victoria looked up with a mild confusion. "Oh, you must mean Sarah. She's Miss Chin, but I think there might be some confusion. Our reservation was made under Marcus Whitman's membership account." The gentleman smiled and extended his hand toward me. "Miss Chin, I'm David Morrison, the club manager. I apologize for interrupting your family gathering, but I wanted to personally ensure everything is meeting your expectations today." I shook his hand warmly. "Hello, Mr. Morrison. The service has been excellent, thank you." "Wonderful. I also wanted to mention that your usual private dining room is available if you'd prefer more privacy for your family event. I know you typically reserve it for your quarterly meetings, but it's free this afternoon if you'd like to relocate." The table fell silent. Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth, and I could see confusion spreading across the faces of my relatives. "That's very thoughtful," I replied calmly. "We're quite comfortable here in the main dining room today, but I appreciate the offer." "Of course. Also, I have those ownership reports you requested last week ready for your review. Should I have them sent to your downtown office, or would you prefer to take them with you today?" The silence at our table became more pronounced. Margaret set down her water glass carefully, and Robert's legal training seemed to kick in as he processed the implications of what he was hearing. "The office would be fine," I said calmly. "Monday morning delivery works well." Mr. Morrison nodded professionally. "Perfect. And thank you again for accommodating the charity golf tournament next month. Having the club owner personally involved in our community outreach initiatives means a great deal to our members and staff." He turned to address the table. I hope you're all enjoying your afternoon at Willowbrook. Miss Chin has created something truly special here. We're honored to be part of her vision for combining luxury hospitality with community engagement. After he departed, the silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Victoria stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret, surprise mixed with something that might have been embarrassment. "Sarah," she said slowly, "did he just say you own this place?" "I do," I confirmed simply. "I purchased Willowbrook 3 years ago when the previous ownership group was looking to sell." Uncle James blinked several times. "You own this entire country club?" "Yes, the property, the facilities, and the business operations." Margaret leaned back in her chair. "But Victoria said you work at an office downtown." "I do. I have a property management company downtown. We oversee several hospitality and real estate investments, including Willowbrook." Robert's lawyer instincts engaged. "This is a significant operation, Sarah. The real estate value alone must be substantial, not to mention the business revenue from memberships and events." "It's been a good investment," I agreed. "The club has a strong reputation and loyal membership base." Victoria seemed to be processing multiple thoughts simultaneously. "Why didn't you say anything when we were discussing the venue choice when Marcus was arranging the reservation? You all seemed so pleased with Marcus's generosity in hosting the family year." I didn't want to diminish his thoughtful gesture by making it about my business interests. Aunt Linda found her voice. "Sarah, this changes everything we've been discussing today. When you mentioned looking into real estate investment, you were being quite modest about your actual experience level." "I prefer to listen and learn from everyone's perspectives," I explained. "Family gatherings are about spending time together, not comparing business achievements." The conversation that followed was markedly different from the earlier discussions. Instead of offering advice and guidance, my relatives began asking detailed questions about property management, business operations, and investment strategies. The tone shifted from protective to genuinely curious and respectful. Victoria sat quietly for several minutes before speaking. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I made assumptions about your financial situation and your familiarity with places like this. That was presumptuous of me." "You were being protective," I replied. "That comes from caring about family." "Still, I should have asked about your circumstances rather than assuming. When you mentioned your office job, I pictured something completely different from what you actually do." Uncle David leaned forward with interest. "I'd love to hear about how you identified Willowbrook as an investment opportunity. The due diligence process for a property this size must have been incredibly complex." "It was thorough," I agreed, "but the fundamentals were strong. Good location, established member base, well-maintained facilities. The previous owners had built something valuable, they just needed to transition to new leadership." Over the next hour, the family gathering transformed into an engaged discussion about business strategy, property development, and hospitality management. My relatives shared their own professional experiences and challenges, and I found myself offering insights and suggestions based on my work with various property types and business models. Marcus arrived from the golf course during dessert, surprised to find the conversation so focused on business topics. When Victoria explained the afternoon's revelations, his reaction was gracious and enthusiastic. "Sarah, this is incredible! I had no idea you were in hospitality management, much less that you owned Willowbrook. I've been bragging to my colleagues about discovering this gem of a club, and it turns out it's been in the family all along." "I'm glad you've enjoyed being a member here," I said. "Mr. Morrison mentioned you've been active in several of the club's community initiatives. The charity golf tournaments have been fantastic, and the networking opportunities have been valuable for my consulting practice." You paused thoughtfully. "I have to ask, when I made the reservation for today, did you know about it in advance?" "I review all private event bookings," I confirmed, "but I wanted you to feel ownership of the family gathering. Your initiative to bring everyone together was meaningful, regardless of the venue." As the afternoon concluded, several relatives expressed interest in learning more about my business operations. Cousin Robert mentioned potential legal needs for property acquisitions, while Uncle David suggested collaboration opportunities between our respective real estate investments. Victoria approached me as we prepared to leave. "Sarah, I feel terrible about my comments earlier. I was so focused on trying to help you feel comfortable that I completely missed the fact that you were probably more familiar with this environment than any of us. Your intentions were kind, I assured her. Family support comes in many forms. I'd love to take you to lunch sometime, somewhere we can talk properly about your business and catch up on everything I've clearly missed over the past few years. I'd enjoy that very much. As I walked to my car, Mr. Morrison approached one final time. Ms. Chen, I hope the family gathering exceeded your expectations. Your relatives seemed quite impressed with the facilities. They did indeed. Thank you for your discretion in handling the situation. I wasn't sure how much to share about my involvement here. Of course, we're always happy to accommodate our owners' preferences, whether that's maintaining privacy or facilitating family connections. The staff understands that different occasions call for different approaches. Driving home through the familiar suburban roads, I reflected on the day's unexpected developments. The family reunion had certainly been memorable, though not for the reasons anyone had anticipated. More importantly, the initial awkwardness had evolved into genuine connection and mutual respect. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Thank you for being so gracious today. I'm proud to have such an accomplished sister, and sorry it took me so long to recognize it. Looking forward to our lunch. The message was followed by several others from various relatives, all expressing similar sentiments and interest in maintaining stronger family connections going forward. What had started as a potentially uncomfortable social obligation had become an opportunity for authentic family bonding based on mutual respect rather than perceived differences in circumstances. Sometimes the most meaningful family moments arise from unexpected revelations and the conversations they inspire.